So lockdown has provided us, really, hasn't it, with a moment to take stock of a lot of things, and to reflect on the present, the past, and what the future will mean. So we thought it'd be fun to set up some Happy Me podcasts, to give some insight into why we do what we do and why we have this crazy passion to want to get people up and dancing. And so really what we thought would be fun is that these podcasts in a way are an insight into the people, the pupils, the teachers, the choreographers and the artists that I've been fortunate enough to have connected with and met along the way, and really kind of look at how they've had a significant impact on my adventures in dance, but adventures in dance in general, because it is a very, very small world. Anyway, so I'm so excited because today we are going to meet Zak Nemorin, who is head of jazz dance at Millennium Performing Arts and a winner, I think. Is that right? Have I got this right? Of the 2020 Offies for the best musical production for Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. Is that right?
Yes, indeed. So hello. I was the choreographer of Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, and unfortunately, I didn't actually win the choreography award, but we did win best overall musical. So yeah,
That's amazing. That's just so exciting, and it must have been a really exciting evening as well for you all, because there were a lot of different categories that you were up for nomination, weren't you?
I think we had 6 nominations for various different things.
So yeah,
for that particular award.
Tremendous. So we'll come back to that. You can tell us all about that journey. But a lot of time has passed, Zak.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, we've just been talking about, I think the last time I saw you was at East Croydon, and you'd hot-footed it back from New York.
I had.
And I think you had.
I had my suitcase in hand as well. I just got off a flight.
It did. You were dancing down the street with that suitcase. And I think, if it's right, it was the 25th anniversary reunion at the BRIT School, I think.
It was. Was it 20th? I think it was the 20th. Oh, no, 25th.
Oh, I think it was the 25th, because I think
you're right.
I think it's the 25th. And I remember obviously we met at Box Park, and you were some friends, and I was lucky enough to be there with Nick Murray, who was the director of musical theatre. Was she? Is that what
she was? Yeah, she was. My head.
She was your head. How fun! And I think we ended up gate crashing Nick's room at the end, actually, but we can talk about that later. But can you remember where you'd been? You can't, can you? Had you been dancing?
No. I think that there was a period of my life that kind of, I was travelling here and there and everywhere for various different kind of reasons and various different projects that I was working on, or perhaps I was on tour. Maybe I was on tour. Maybe I was working on a film project that I had on the go at the time. I think that's the one. I think I was working on my film project at that time. And getting on and off flights was for those couple of years was insane. I think I maxed out on about 28, 29 flights in the space of a year.
Oh my goodness.
It's disgusting. Carbon footprint, disgraceful.
It's disgraceful. And it's weird, isn't it? Because of the situation now. So, obviously now we're in this crazy situation. And I guess it gives you time to kind of look back at that and go, wow, that was a whirlwind. And look at what I kind of achieved in that moment.
Well, I'm one of those people that I thrive on just being busy. Some people say that I overwork myself and overload what I get up to. But I just can't seem to, I'm not one of those people that likes doing nothing. I like to always have something on the go, even if it's just an idea, even if it's just a kind of a genesis, kind of like seedling of something. I'll always be thinking about, what's next, or what could I do, or where could I go, or even if it's something as simple as a holiday.
And then that's cool, isn't it? And do you find that you've got those little things that are all sort of just spread out? So like, I don't know, is it like you're doing a documentary at the moment, aren't you? Doing a jazz dance documentary?
Yeah. I mean, I'll come back to the jazz dance documentary, but I think because maybe it's to do with that whole musical theatre kind of aspect, that whole triple threat thing, having to be able to do everything. I think when I was training, I had so many different interests and wasn't kind of locked in just to one thing. Like even when I was at the BRIT School, and then I did go to Studio Centre for a year, and I left and went to Millennium Performing Arts for my last 2 years. That training in musical theatre for me just it made me think about everything and I wanted to do everything and get involved with everything that's around me. So yeah, I think that kind of like busyness in the brain space kind of continued throughout the rest of my life. And actually, I was really lucky when I was in my second year of training. So when I just got to Millennium Performing Arts, Arlene Phillips came to what we called the Christmas Cabaret back then. And she went, I want that boy to audition for the original cast of We Will Rock You.
That's like amazing, isn't that?
And the directors of Millennium, there were 3 directors originally. Sadly, one of the directors, my mentor, Jackie Mitchell, she passed away some years ago now, and that's who I took over from. Anyway, I'll come back to taking over from Jackie. But yeah, they said, no, you can't have him. He's in his second year. He's got a year and a half to go of training. You can't have him. So there was this conversation between Arlene Phillips and the directors of Millennium going back and forth saying, I want him. You can't have him. I want him. You can't have him. And then eventually they agreed. Millennium agreed to let me audition, and if I were to get that job, the original cast of We Will Rock You, they'd give me time off for rehearsal, and as soon as rehearsal was done and the show was up and running, I'd then be in for 9 a.m. ballet every morning, do the full day, go and do warm-up at work at the Dominion Theatre, and then do the show in the evening, probably go out and have a few pints afterwards, fall asleep, get back up again.
And is that what you did?
That's what I did. And I did that in my second year for We Will Rock You. And then in my third year, I did the same thing with Chicago, the musical in the West End. So I think that's where my busy head kind of comes from. I have to be busy to thrive.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. When there's a holiday and I know I have a week off, I'm dead to the world. Literally. And actually self-isolating at the moment kind of is like one of those times. And it's, even though I'm busy in my head and doing little projects on my laptop and stuff, I just, being able to not see people as well, I think is a good thing.
Yeah.
Just for your own sanity sometimes. Obviously, it can get a little bit too much if you're on your own too much, which I am. But yeah, I think using this time, this self-isolating time in a positive way can only be a good thing.
Yeah, and I think for creatives it is a good thing. It's a good time, isn't it? It's a good time to reflect or write or whatever.
Yeah, because I guess we all have, what I certainly have, all of these little ideas and little kind of seedlings kind of like always kind of growing in my head. And when, for instance, I teach at Millennium Performing Arts full time, I'm kind of stepping back from performing a little bit, but I used to do that side by side, teach and do like West End shows like side by side. So my life hasn't changed since that first job in second year. So I was always like working the full day. And I think Can I
interrupt you? Can I take you back? Can I take you back? So I want to take everyone on a little journey. I want to right to the beginning. And I want to know, because I didn't ever know, but so how did you land at the BRIT school for a start? What happened before then that took you there?
Okay, so I when I was 9, I joined a youth group with the English National Opera. It was called Live Wires, and then the older group was called Live Culture. And I can't actually remember her name. I think it may have been Kerry Nichols. I'm not sure. She came in and did a dance workshop. So this is an opera kind of youth company, but we had a dance workshop coming. Oh no, she was called Karen. We had a dance workshop, and she went, "You're a dancer." And I'd never danced a step before in my life. And she went, "You're a dancer. You should really consider it." And I ended up, because I was at normal kind of public school. And I ended up, and I was always into the arts, and I was always into kind of like making plays and being stupid and recording myself with a tape recorder.
Yes.
And anyway, so I then kind of just looked at schools, because I was at secondary school at the time, and I was like doing drama in secondary school, normal drama secondary school. And then I ended up going, no, I want to do this. I want to do this for real. I really want to do this for real. So I just looked around to see you know, I don't come from a well-off background, so I was like, I looked around to see where was free as well, where was free. And obviously the BRIT school, it was close to me. I'm a Londoner. It's just, you know, just south of me really. And the BRIT school just seemed perfect, and it had a really good vibe. And I had to go there. I made my mind up. Boom, done.
You see, isn't that wonderful that you have that memory of Sir Kerry or Karen? We're not sure.
I think it might. Do you know what? I can't remember her name.
But you see, I would say, and I'd say it's probably the same for Nick, but it was exactly the same for me, because I remember my memory of you, I think, is you coming to do an ISTD tap class. And I think you came in with Stuart Matthew Price, actually.
He was the year below me, yeah. But
yeah.
Yes.
So I think you both came in, but I think, which is really unlike you, you kind of snuck in, but obviously you've got that real look. So I remember thinking, oh, this is great, these two guys, you know. And I just thought, oh, we'll just let them, you know, we'll just muck in, you know, see how it goes, this first lesson. And you, as you are, just picked it up like that. And I remember saying to you at the end, oh wow, you know this. You know, you've obviously done this for a few years. We need to enter you for your exam.
I had never done a tap step in my life.
And it's the same as this lady, isn't it? You know, it is that you're just a natural dancer, and you know, and you did. That's exactly what you said to me. You're like, I've never done this in my life, and I just couldn't believe that. I just thought that was incredible.
But then I don't know. I wouldn't be so bold as to say certain people are meant to do certain things, because actually no. You know, I think everybody has got that internal rhythm within them. It's just whether or not your inhibitions, I guess, are set free. Like you're not held back by your inhibitions to just try something out and not, you know, feel like a tit doing it, really. Do you know what I mean? Or making mistakes. I don't care about making mistakes.
Very focused. Like, were you aware of that yourself? Like, did you kind of have a kind of, you know, did you have that sort of ambition and that drive and that light? Because you just always seemed, like you always knew that was where you were headed.
I was on a total mission. I was on a mission. I remember my mum, dad, auntie, uncle, we all went to go to my first ever musical, watching my first ever musical. It was Hot Shoe Shuffle. I think it was the Queen's Theatre on Shaftesbury Avenue. And it was the American kind of like tap dogs type people doing Hot Shoe Shuffle. So Adam Garcia was in it. He was playing, I think he was about 20 years old at the time or something. And, and I went, I have to do that. Bear in mind, this is before BRIT school, so you know, I was like, I have to do that. And then obviously Saturday Night Fever came out. I was a little bit obsessed with Adam Garcia, I'm not going to lie. And,
I can now see it, because I remember going to see Saturday Night Fever, and I can now see, like, wow, if you were thinking that, I can absolutely see that you could see yourself being hit.
So I kind of like, I was like, I want to do this. I want to have a similar career. I want to kind of, this is my route. Strangely enough, I actually told Adam Garcia this years down the line, because I choreographed an episode of Agatha Raisin for Acorn TV, and he was one of the leads in it. So I choreographed on my then, like my then idol. Oh, that's so embarrassing!
Isn't that amazing? Isn't it?
But I told him.
Sound like that.
Yeah, but I told him.
He was flattered.
He laughed at me. It was in a good way.
Oh, that's a great story. Yeah, I mean, I remember, and also the other thing I remember, I'm sorry if this is a bit embarrassing, but I have to ask you, was it your mum used to make your dancewear? It was amazing. Do you remember?
Yeah. Oh my God, I totally forgot about that.
Oh, it was just, you were so ahead of the time, because I remember saying to you, like, where do you get your dancewear from? Because for boys, I've been looking for like decent dancewear for so long, and you said mum makes it, and
We found a random T-shirt that kind of fit me really well one day, and it had a bit of interest to it, so it wasn't just a bog standard T-shirt. And I went, Mum, can we make this in lycra or stretchy kind of like material, whatever it was? And he was like, yeah, let's give it a go. And then that was kind of like my bog standard wear, that same T-shirt in various colours.
You had your brand. You see, you need to now start your collection. Do you realise that? It was amazing. It was so amazing. Oh, I've got some little.
Oh, but my mum and dad have always been really supportive of everything that I do. So that, you know, my mum still makes my costumes for my students now. Like if I've got a piece that I'm creating with Millennium or whatever. Actually, also, Gentlemen Prefer Blondes that I choreographed at the Union Theatre. My mum was kind of making bits and pieces for those shows.
Oh my God! See, I love that, because that's like that's a real memory. That's a real memory of you. That's amazing, isn't it? You must start your brand now. That's it. Remember and dancewear brand. Here we go.
I'm a little bit more rotund now to get away with those like.
Oh God. I'm just thinking when we go through the BRIT school, really. So then, obviously, we talked about it a bit, but you went to Studio Centre for that year.
Yeah.
And then we talked a little bit before about so then a lot of the heads from Studio then formed Millennium.
Yeah. So I went to Studio Centre because I was, by that time when I was at the BRIT school, I was seeing various different musicals and shows in the West End, and kind of doing research about who I liked the look of as a performer and as a presence on stage. And there was a real kind of like close call between, you know, Studio Centre or Lane Theatre Arts. I always had that debate in my head. Studio Centre or Lane Theatre Arts. And it just kind of like that. There were a couple of people like Danny Crosley I really looked up to, and he was amazing. He's still amazing, but he was amazing. So I kind of, that helped me make my decision in the end. So I ended up going to Studio Centre for a year to train with the people that trained people like him, who I was looking up to. It just so happened that a lot of the people that, I don't know whether this is a good or bad thing to say, but it just so happens that a lot of the people that someone like him was trained by had left and created their own school, which was Millennium Performing Arts, and I didn't know about it. So I went to Studio Centre, I did my first year, and then defected and kind of went with the people that I originally wanted to train with.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And so that obviously was like a massive, like an incredible sort of moment in time, really, the people that you were studying with. And there must have been so many people that really influenced you or became real mentors for you. You talked about Jackie, didn't you? So
yeah. Oh God. So there were 3 directors of Millennium Performing Arts. It's Jackie Mitchell, Donald McLennan, and Icky Mass. All 3 of them, like, respectively, have their amazing careers, and they've been teaching for decades. I think they had, when I was there, I think they had about 80 years experience between them, like in teaching. And obviously they've been performers, and, you know, they've done it all. And but Jackie Mitchell was the head of jazz, and that was always my thing. I always loved jazz, and she taught me mathematics-based isolation technique, which is what I now teach at Millennium as head of jazz. So, because sadly Jackie passed away a few years ago, and I took over the role of head of that department. But yeah, no, it was just trained by what I felt was the best, and then had Jackie, Donald, Icky, Sarah Hansen, who's now the principal of the school, Nikki Wollaston, Stephen Mear, oh God, so many different people. Lara Costa, who was another person that I was looking up to in one of the shows that I liked. She's also a bit of an Elmhurst and Studio Centre person. And, you know, oh God, I love it. I'm actually getting goosebumps just kind of talking about the past. That's so weird.
But isn't that just so, like, so amazingly special? Because I think, I don't know, but like, I know people often say to me, oh, you know, when you're in a class, then, you know, people teach class, and, you know, loads of people teach class. So, you know, kind of, why do you do it, or what's that? And I think you've just hit it just there. It's that, to me, it's that history. It's that fact that you have been in a room with those people, and their personality, their loves, their influences, all of that history somehow kind of becomes this osmosis, or kind of gets ingrained in you, and you kind of take their passion, like you
and also one of these things is, you know, I hope they don't mind me saying this. Well, Jackie sadly passed away a few years ago, but, you know, Donald and Icky less so, but, you know, they're not the youngest of people, but they've worked with the greats. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like Donald, he's one of the directors and head of ballet. You know, he was in a show with Ginger Rogers at the Theatre Royal Drury Lane, and it's just, and when you're taught by those kind of people, the stories that they say, the stories that they tell in class, you know, just dripping little bits of information here and there. I think that's the best way to teach, actually, just dripping little bits of information, little nuggets every now and then.
Yeah.
And that's what I certainly, as a teacher now, or an educator now, that's certainly what I try to achieve.
And I think that, again, like storytelling, it's a massive thing, isn't it? Because that's what that's what has moved me. That's what's kind of stuck with me. So, I mean,
well, let's face it, let's face it, we're all storytellers in this industry. We have to be. I know some kind of art forms are like a dance for dance sake type, contemporary type thing. Some hip hop can be dance for dance sake, but the majority of the time, we're all trying to tell a story or get across some form of emotive state or narrative or whatever. So yeah, I mean, I've lost my point now. but
I mean, it was a storytelling thing, isn't it?
And we're all storytellers, so we just need to enjoy telling the story.
And are there any little stories that are like your favourites to give to your students? What's your favourite memory? Or
I mean, I think people wouldn't get away with it nowadays because, I think we were all trained in a slightly different way to how the PC generation get trained nowadays. But because, you know, we have to be careful nowadays as teachers. But I always remember my first class with Jackie Mitchell. She was looking at me. She was staring at me whilst I was doing one of her exercises, and I wasn't lifting up my lower abdominals. I was just letting them kind of hang out, and she stared me down. She looked me up and down, looked to my stomach, tapped my stomach and went, "Not at this school," and walked away. I was like, because she was American as well. So
that's really fake, isn't it?
But I mean, you know, that some people would see that as a negative, but for me, you know, I think as a teacher, good teachers can judge who you can say those kinds of things to, if that person is adult enough in the head. And I thrived on it. I loved it.
Like you talked about, you know, like, so I love the fact that you kind of said, yeah, all the way through you had that focus and you kind of knew, and you'd also kind of channeled in which performers you wanted to be like. So, you know, were there any musicals? Like, I mean, obviously you talked about We Will Rock You. So, I mean, in a way, that kind of, you were rocketed into it, weren't you, straight away? You were straight into the industry. So, I mean, once you'd had that experience, were you just then itching to get out there? And were there any musicals you were thinking, yeah, I want to be in that one?
Oh, totally. I mean, even from way back in the BRIT school days, you know, I always had kind of like a set kind of 4 musicals that I had my eye on, and I was like, I have to learn how to be and do that. And those musicals were Chicago, Saturday Night Fever, Cats, and I'm looking around my room. I can only remember those 3, actually. Oh, there's Fosse as well.
Yeah.
And out of the 4, I managed to do 3 of them. Because Fosse wasn't around, and I had never auditioned for it, so who knows whether I would have done Fosse. But yeah. But I always had my eye on those kind of things. And then, yeah, I was catapulted into the industry really quickly, and I was just itching to continue. And the head of acting at Millennium at the time, and is now actually, Nigel West, he was the resident director of Chicago on the West End. So I asked him in my 3rd year whether I could kind of like be able to audition for him, and I ended up getting that, and I just kind of like continued. I don't know how I continued, and I just went on a roll, really. I just kind of show hopped for a good nearly 20 years. I kind of show hopped, actually.
And
And I
what's
have
your
no idea.
favourite? What's been your favourite?
My favourite. See, it's always a tough kind of like question to answer that, because everyone asks that question. But I suppose my favourite, plural, I've done are probably Cats, Chicago, for two various different reasons. I always wanted to be Mungo Jerry in Cats, and I always wanted to be in Chicago. I was front of house at Chicago, like for a good 4 years, like when I was at college, like, well, you know, from Brit school time actually, and you know, so I always wanted to be in that. But then other kind of Saturday Night Fever, because I actually was alternate Tony Manero, the lead for a time, so that was great career wise. So I guess they're my three that were my favourites. However, the most special kind of shows are always the original casts, I think.
Yeah.
Because I think I've done about six original casts-ish, something like that. So Mary Poppins was an amazing time. We worked with you know, the writers and Julian Fellows and just all different people. The Sherman, the remaining Sherman, the Sherman brothers then. And it was just insane working on that show, because it was like being back in 1960, whenever it was made originally, and just learning
really
these
special.
people.
I didn't realise that, and that's crazy. And also you had like Matthew Bourne and you had Stephen Mear working on that. Well, that must have been insane.
I loved it.
Yeah,
I loved it.
for you, because you kind of loved the whole package, don't you? You kind of appreciate
it. And I think that's that could be where my choreographic brain kind of sparked as well, because Matthew works in a very particular way, and he quite enjoys sharing and workshopping material that he's, you know, producing and making, and then kind of what feels good on different people's bodies. Stephen works in a similar way as well, but is a little bit more structured in his process. But I think that's where my choreographic kind of ideas begun to set in. Because I just enjoyed that process of kind of playing and just getting into it. So 20 years down the line, I'm kind of not stopping performing, but I'm kind of stepping back a little bit and trying to become an actual choreographer now.
Yeah, but like talking to you as well, you can kind of you kind of really see that, and I think like the fact that you talk about, you kind of had done your research, you know, and you'd seen the musicals and you'd seen those people that have influenced you. That reminds me a lot from what I read about Matthew Bourne and like his autograph hunting and his focus. I mean, it's such focus. You have that focus, and it's like all of that kind of early experience of theatre really does inform what you're doing later on. It's quite interesting, isn't it?
We all have to know the roots. We all have to know the past to go forward. I think it's ridiculous, and that's actually one of the reasons why I started making this documentary on jazz dance.
Yeah.
Because, you know, my mentor Jackie Mitchell, she died, and that link to the past, you know, that link to the past of when your teachers who had worked with those previous kind of mentors of theirs is beginning to kind of like fade away as people get older. So I wanted to kind of document and explore the origins of jazz dance, and hopefully that will inform how, you know, younger people kind of see the art form, I guess.
But that's cool. Well, let's move on to that, because I'm going to test your knowledge.
Oh my God.
Of the history of jazz.
Oh no! Don't do it! Don't do it! I'm going to be rubbish at this now. Wait, put me on the spot.
Yeah, I was going to ask you. I don't know how far you go back in the jazz dance documentary, but they talk, a lot of it obviously is rooted, isn't it, and kind of the whole. You probably remember it's from the Brit school days. The journey from the West Indies through to the
Yes,
States.
absolutely.
Yeah, all that.
Yeah.
And then obviously, you know, like there's so much influence. I mean, I'm sure you do as well, but like, I absolutely love Alvin Ailey. So I just, and Revelations for me was like, oh, it's just goosebumps. But yeah, going back to the beginning, I mean, your documentary, where are you starting? Are you starting from kind of the roots of jazz, or, you know?
We're trying to fit we're trying to fit 400 years worth in an hour and a half. Oh, we have fit 400 years worth in an hour and a half. So we really do go back to Africa, and not
and
physically, but we really do go back to the origins. Yeah.
Amazing.
And then obviously via the transatlantic slave trade, we kind of follow each era, each evolution, each change politically, socially, that affects how people move in society. Because actually, jazz dance is the thing that really is the social way that we all move together. You know, jazz dance is dancing in the club now. Do you know what I mean? That is jazz dance. That's social dance. That's vernacular jazz. So we go right the way from the beginning and just go through all of the eras, all the way up until now, and contemplate the future.
And this is what's so interesting, because there is that journey, isn't there? And then it kind of goes through, well, I don't know, you could kind of pick me up on it, but you kind of got through the 20s, and you've got like the Charleston and the Jitterbug, obviously into the 30s and the 40s, Indie and all of that stuff. And kind of moving through, and then the history of jazz as we kind of taught it, I suppose, when we were at BRIT and stuff. But you have people like Agnes DeMille, who was really important because of the choreography with Oklahoma and the storytelling, and then West Side, obviously, with Jerome Robbins. So what would you say if people were looking back at this particular period of time? What would be the style, the jazz style, that people would associate with today? Because a while back it was kind of LA jazz, wasn't it? I don't know. It was.
Yeah. What you mean? You mean the style now, or you mean the style then?
Because as you sort of said, like the 70s and the 80s was very much about theatrical jazz, and then sort of music theatre kind of kicked in with Jackson and Madonna and all their kind of big concerts or the presentations. And then, so, you know, kind of what did come next? What was the next thing? If we're looking at sort of...
Well, I think again, we're in a similar time that we were, that the world was in back in the 20s, when the Charleston and all that, you know. If you think about jazz dance in two separate lines, you've got, on one side, you've got the social aspect, which is what the Charleston and the Lindy Hop and all of that is. And on the other side, you've got theatrical jazz, which is the more formalized, codified kind of way of training.
Yeah.
Training is important. And the other side is the social aspect. I think the social aspect now is beginning to take over with hip-hop theatre, with things like Hamilton, which is not new, by the way. You know, hip-hop theatre has been going since the 80s. It's great. But I think people forget that actually this is a long process, and it's actually a cultural thing. It's actually a really, really, really cultural thing. What tends to happen is the Black communities tend to kind of like start doing, well, they do their own social kind of aspect of dance or performing or whatever, and then that slowly kind of like gets taken into a more codified Europeanist kind of format, and then turns into something new. That's what transmission is. That's what it, you know, you call transmission, kind of gradually evolving and kind of taking ideas from each other, culturally and whatever. But back in the Roaring Twenties, you could call that the hip hop of its day.
Yeah.
Now I think the hip hop, which has almost kind of like gone down a slightly more contemporary route now. Again, that's kind of like the purist of hip hop is kind of being taken over by a European kind of format, which is the contemporary kind of aspect of things, and is kind of molding and changing. So I think we're in that world at the moment in popular culture. I mean, I don't necessarily mean in just how we all dance or how we all move. I just mean in something that's kind of in your face at the moment. And then you kind of also have this kind of lyrical contemporary jazz thing going on at the moment, which I do take issue with, actually. I take issue with it. The whole what we call lyrical jazz at the moment. I think people are misplacing and misusing the word lyrical, or misusing the word contemporary as well. But then contemporary does mean now, so actually it's the right word, but then if you're going to be a purist in contemporary, you kind of go down the Graham kind of release kind of like route. So I think there's a lot of debate going on at the dance world as to what we call these things, because actually, because of the nature of how we all steal and take from each other and evolve over time, because there's so much of this kind of mishmash going on at the moment, I don't think that dance, the majority of dance, or a lot of dance, can be kind of like put under the umbrella of one word, like contemporary, or like jazz, or like Mear. And I think, especially in the jazz world, I think people are just trying to claw and claim their own take on what they think a jazz is. Do you know what I mean? And not necessarily kind of having a dialogue with the jazz world.
Yeah.
I think people are selfish, really. I think people are selfish. Oh my God, I can choreograph. I put a tilt in my choreography, and I hate tilts, by the way. I'm like, why would you show your plumbing? You know, those kind of bad seconds.
Oh yes, no.
Why would you just show your plumbing to the audience all the time? It makes no sense to me whatsoever. At least do it on an angle so I don't see everything quite so plainly. But
I'm glad you said that. There are so many people that would totally agree with you on
that. But yeah, I think that's probably one of the main kind of features. You know, if someone puts a tilt in it, then that makes it, woo, people clap. Do you know what I mean? It's like, why are you clapping? That's just a trick. It's not even got great technique. Do you know what I mean? It's just throw yourself around type thing. Dreadful. But,
but it's good again, and thank you for that. Amazing. Like I hope this jazz documentary comes out, because I think it's fascinating. I think the fact that you've kind of separated it into the social and the technical really makes so much sense, and it's huge, because you know, I've just been sort of going back to my old jazz theology, because I'm writing this lovely scheme of work. But it's a huge umbrella that I'm not sure whether people really appreciate, you know, with jazz, in terms, like you say, of the lyrical or the hot, or you know, there's so many different styles, aren't there? It's huge.
I don't think people are educated in it, and that's not necessarily meaning that they don't want to be educated in it. I think the nature of how the world seems to work today, everything's so fast, and everything's just at the touch of a button, and everything just has to happen now, instantly, bang, bang, bang. I don't think people have the time or actually the inclination to kind of actually look back and actually kind of go, oh, I make that connection there, and I make that connection there, and that's how that culture evolved from the Roaring *20s and kind of evolved into hip hop via, I don't know, the hustle, or via the Soul Train, or via, you know, all of that kind of stuff. You know, I don't think people really care. And I think because everyone's so visual now, people don't read, actually. So that's another reason why I decided to make a documentary, because you can visually get that information across to, especially young minds, to the viewer. So it can make sense.
Oh, it's exciting. So when do we think it will come out? You're waiting for sponsorship at the moment?
Well, it's finished. It's finished. We are still in the process of colouring it, colouring it, and we still need to raise money for, you know, the music rights and the archive footage rights and all of the kind of like promotion, all that kind of stuff that will happen later on. And then who knows what we're going to do. We're just kind of, obviously we're in this isolation period at the moment, so we can't really do too much.
No, it's in process. That's cool. So here we go.
So hopefully a producer will come along, or many producers will come along and just go, money.
Well, that's it. Maybe this is it. Maybe this is your moment. Maybe this is going to get you that money. I hope so. That leads me on. So I thought, because your love is musical theatre, obviously, I need to know a bit more about your love. So I'm going to ask you either or. which you prefer? You've kind of answered this maybe. So cabaret or chorus line? Which would you choose?
That's so difficult. That is so difficult.
I know.
Oh, because they're two of my biggest influences. You're horrible. You're horrible. You're a chorus line.
Oh, it's hard, isn't it?
I think my younger self would say a chorus line. My older self would say cabaret.
Yes, that's a good answer. I agree. I absolutely agree. Okay, interesting. Sound of Music or the producers?
The producers. I know, weird. But then I suppose that's if I'm in the mood for it. Because I love the Sound of Music.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
But I think the producers is more
you. Know
you.
what?
I think it's more you, isn't it?
I think the producers is more me on the comic level.
Yeah.
But I think the greatness of the Sound of Music tops the producers. My God, these either ors are not good for me.
Well, I did try to
really
be a little bit controversial. And it gets easier now. It gets easier.
You know what? I'm going to change my mind. I'm going to say Sound of Music.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It is an epic one, isn't it? It is.
And I actually have a little kind of interest in, is this morbid? I have a little interest in that World War II kind of era as well. So, you know, so it's
very clever on many levels, Okay. You've kind of answered it. Your favourite Lloyd Webber musical?
Oh, no. I'm going to go against you on that one. Musically?
Yeah.
Or as a show together?
Ooh. Musically, I think. Let's do musically.
Musically, I think the best score would be Sunset Boulevard.
Oh. Do you know, I've never seen Sunset
Boulevard. Oh, it's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah,
I think the best score is Sunset Boulevard. I think the best kind of musical that piqued my first interest would be Phantom of the Opera, and Cats, just because I loved Cats.
Because you couldn't wait to hear that. Yeah, I think that moment when the chandelier comes down, it's just, it's amazing. Favourite Ben Pasek and Justin Paul song? Do you know who?
No.
Okay, so they wrote The Greatest... No, they didn't write The Greatest Showman. They did the music for The Greatest Showman.
Oh, that, right, okay.
Evan Hansen. So you're not a fan?
Do you know what? I loved The Greatest Showman. I actually really, really loved it. The Greatest Showman is something that spiked my interest in modern musicals again.
Yeah.
Actually, in the modern kind of way of doing it, because I think it was getting really dodgy. And I went, ooh, actually, so The Greatest Showman was definitely a thing.
It's funny, isn't it? I remember when that came out, and I remember on buses and stuff, the campaign for it, and I remember thinking, I don't want to see that. I'm going to hate it if I go and see that.
Yeah.
And then I remember, being bowled away by it.
I loved it. I absolutely loved it.
Oh, that's good. Favourite musical theatre performer? We're whizzed through now.
God, Jesus. That's tough. It's really tough. Really, 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 really tough. Really, 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 really tough. Musical theatre performer. As a singer, Laura Michelle Kelly.
Oh, why? Why?
She just sounded beautiful. I could literally listen to that woman's voice all day long. Oh. As in a chilled, relaxy type way. Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay. Favourite Elaine Page song?
One night in Bangkok and the world. No.
I think I'm showing my age now. Okay, Bette Midler or Liza Minnelli?
Okay, Bette Midler's got longevity, but I love Liza. I love Liza too much.
Yeah.
Liza.
Good. Esther or Jean Kelly? Esther or Jean Kelly?
Jean Kelly.
Yeah, totally. Favourite Fosse musical?
I think The Pajama Game.
Oh.
Mm.
Why The Pajama Game?
Because I think it was the moment that or was it Dan Yankees? Anyway, Pajama Game, I think, was the moment that Gwen Verdon started working with him. Yeah. And that almost kind of like created Fosse as we know it. That collaboration kind of created Fosse as we know it. So I think purely for the fact that it was the sparky moment when they started working together.
Yeah.
It would be that.
Yay! Oh, Zak, it's been such a pleasure. Oh my goodness, I just feel so grateful to have chatted to you.
I mean, I'm sure I've talked and chat a whole heap of rubbish as well.
No, it's just been great. I feel like we've covered quite, like the history of the jazz was amazing, and just, and hearing about your journey has been awesome. I'd say, just as a final thing, what would you say have been the highlights for you? What have been the highlights? If you look back over
you know what? I think my highlights are definitely, everyone's careers are very different. Everyone's careers kind of go in very different paths. And I think the reason this is a highlight, and it's not a one specific moment, but it's the fact that I've worked with so many different people. Because a lot of people, some people tend to kind of just work with one type of choreographer or one choreographer or two choreographers. I've kind of spanned everyone, and I've loved working with everyone and kind of just sponging all of those ideas and different thought processes in. And I think that's kind of hopefully influenced me now. I'm quite lucky in that sense.
Yeah, it's been an incredible journey, hasn't it, so far? And I think so. If you said that obviously choreography is the way that you're going now, or something you're obviously interested in, what would be the best project you could do? What would be the most exciting musical that you could be involved with choreographing? Or who would you like to work with, maybe as collaborators or a collaborative team? If you had your dream collaborative team.
I actually have had a very, very brief conversation with Gareth Valentine one day. I'd love to work with him as, orchestrator and get something together. But you know what? I had a really good time working with Henry Brennan, who was the MD, not my MD, who was the MD for Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. So he was great. But yeah, I've always kind of wanted to create something new, not an existing piece, I think.
Oh, so what we can watch this.
And whatever happens, it has to have a lot of rhythm and syncopation in it. It has to have a good drum percussion section, because if it doesn't have a good drum and percussion section, it's not jazz.
And I think I loved that. I mean, the routine, I saw it briefly online that you taught the other day. Like, how did you make the decisions what to teach? Because that had the rhythm.
So that was quite short notice. I think I had about a day and a half, and I was kind of editing something else I've just made for Millennium at the same time. So I actually mishmashed a few different ideas from a few things that I'd worked with over the years, actually, and just kind of shoved them all in together, and then kind of listened to the context of the song and listened to the lyrics and just went, oh, actually, let's change that, and just go, oh, yeah, and whatever. So it was a bit of a mishmash, a bit of a puzzle that I just shoved together, really. Not too much thought, I won't lie.
But it definitely had rhythm and syncopation. Tick, 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 didn't it? Zak, it's been a pleasure.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your life with us. It's really exciting.
So weird.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.